All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to the Wilton E. Scott Institute for Energy Innovation. My name is Daniel Tachik. I'm the Executive Director of the Center for Innovation and Energy here, and we're thrilled to have you here. We care very deeply about making sure that the technologies that often get developed in the labs have a life outside of the labs, outside of the walls of the university, to have real impact on people's lives, and that is exactly what we hope to have today's speaker talk about today. But before we get there, in case you're unfamiliar with the Scott Institute, we give out seed funding for the new clean energy research all around the university. We provide support for new energy research initiatives. So you might imagine with the very interdisciplinary topic of energy, we have folks all across campus in architecture, in Tepper, School of Business, in science and physics. We bring all those folks together to work on research. We also provide support for energy startups, which you'll hear a lot about today. And we host many energy-themed events, such as the one you're at today. So if you're trying to stay in touch, email that first email address. It'll reach someone on our team. We're also on LinkedIn. We're also on X, and there we are on the web. So CMU Energy Week is our flagship event. It's happening next month. Just want to put a quick plug there. Very focused on AI and energy, very relevant to today's talk. I like to say, and it's true, that CMU Energy Week has something for everyone. We have our first day is going to be focused on investors and entrepreneurs and making sure that investors in the region and all around the country have a touch point with investors and entrepreneurs to make sure that there's chemistry. Every entrepreneur needs an investor. They need funding. They need someone to help support their company in driving their journey towards an actual company that provides a product or service that provides impact to people's lives. And so the first day is really just focused on bringing those investors and those entrepreneurs together. Second day is going to be all about AI and energy and bringing together folks from the region and the country who are focused on various facets of that very, very big challenge that we face today, and that is the AI boom. So how are people thinking about ways in which we can face the challenges and seize the opportunities that AI is bringing towards energy, towards sustainability, and our climate? And so we have a number of keynotes from tech companies, governments, nonprofits, and other companies on that Wednesday. And then lastly, the third day of Energy Week is all focused on students. So the Tepper Energy and Clean Tech Club is hosting a case competition for students all around the country. Followed by, we're going to have a student energy research poster competition, and then we're going to close out the week with a careers in energy networking reception. And so again, for all the students in the room, if you are looking for ways to get plugged in into energy, into climate, into sustainability, and to potentially find a job post-CMU, I highly encourage you to sign up for CMU Energy Week, especially the 27th. And if you're wondering, Daniel, you just said a lot of stuff. How am I supposed to get all of this information from what you're saying? Sign up for our newsletter. So if you sign up for our newsletter, if you're already signed up, you're going to be getting emails about CMU Energy Week over the next couple of weeks. It contains everything that's happening. The newsletter contains everything that's happening at the university in regards to energy, climate, and sustainability. It includes information about various events such as today's lecture, but also CMU Energy Week. So we hope to see you there. We send out this newsletter once a month, so don't worry about us spamming you. I know inboxes are crazy these days, but we try to be very respectful of that. And so once a month, you get the digest of everything that's happening. So with that, I would love to introduce today's featured entrepreneur. So with nearly a decade of architectural experience, including projects for Amazon and the University of Virginia, Ruben is an MBA candidate at CMU's Tepper School, focusing on sustainability and entrepreneurship. A Climate Cap and James R. Swartz Fellow, he received the 2020 John Weibenstein Award for Impactful Public Interest Work. And fun fact that I just learned right before this lecture is that Ruben's old company is building that building next door. So if you, at the end of this lecture, and you're like, what are you talking about? Go take a look out the window. Very exciting stuff. So with that, please join me in welcoming Ruben to the stage.
Thank you. Oh, I got this one. All right. Oh, perfect. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for having me. As Daniel mentioned, I am a current MBA student at Tepper School of Business, and I worked as an architect for a number of years. So first, I believe I got invited here mostly to tell you guys about my journey, especially just because it's so fresh. So just asking questions here, but raise your hand if you've been thinking about starting your own startup. Anybody? All right, awesome. So I came to CMU around a year ago, mostly talking to MBA schools about finding ways to start my own business because I've been working in the industry for a while. I saw some inefficiencies, I saw some opportunities, and I thought, hey, life's too short. Why don't I do it myself? So I want to tell you a little bit about my experience beforehand and how is it that the ideas came about initially. So prior to CMU, I worked, like I mentioned, as an architect. This is a picture from one of my construction sites. As Daniel mentioned, one of the buildings that I worked on was Amazon HQ2 in Northern Virginia. That was a project that Amazon, it was around 3 million square feet, 2 million square feet of office space. It's a giant project, an incredible team, and also a huge team, right? I was a project architect. For those that don't know, that's really the person that is in charge of a lot of the technical details and just making sure that everything from drawings, design intent, makes it to the final project or to the final building. I grew an interest in embodied carbon and construction materials specifically. When I was at CGF, my old firm, there was a program called EC3, which I thought it was super interesting, and it was figuring out where are you getting the materials from and how is the embodied carbon being calculated through the use of EPDs. So EPDs, environmental product declarations, I thought that was like really, really interesting. And at the same time, I got to work with mass timber construction. That was something that was new to me, and I was able to design a multi-faceted space, a multi-purpose space at Amazon headquarters, which is where they really have like a lot of their big meetings. So when you see over there, this is during construction. That picture, that's the ceiling made completely out of mass timber. Mass timber being a better option than concrete just because of the amount of energy that cement production produces. So we thought it's like, hey, this is a good opportunity for us to introduce a different kind of strategy. That's some pictures that I took on the site whenever the roof was actually installed. And that's the building today. Took 6 years of my life. Worked everything from conceptual design all the way till final delivery. We had a certificate of occupancy around June or July. And by August, I was starting my MBA here at Carnegie Mellon. So this was the last project that I worked on. And very proud of the work that we did at the firm. This is what that space looks like today. And this is where a lot of the big meetings at Amazon happen whenever they're having people from the community speak, the governor and stuff like that. This is the multi-space that they use. So having some experience with construction materials, having some experience with doing some of these embodied carbon calculations, I thought, hey, why is it that, I wonder if architects are actually doing this. I think, this was a premium product. Amazon had requested this, but what about all the other architecture firms out there? What about the people that are battling through like making decisions of which products are better than others? So that's how I started my journey here. So throughout this talk, I just want to talk a little bit about all the different resources that are here at CMU that can help you start your business. One of them, the first one that I typically recommend for people is Project Olympus. If you haven't heard of it, Project Olympus is a program here for just getting you started. And the first step is you need to talk to professionals. You need to talk to people outside of just yourself and ask them questions. Really understand if there's a problem there. And if there's a problem there, are they willing to pay for it? Are they willing to do something about it? So I wrote a hypothesis, and this came from my own experience. And I said, part of the reason why I wanted to tackle this problem is because people don't like writing construction specifications. That's really, for those that don't know, construction specifications is just giant manuals of all the materials and the products that go into a building. Majority is related to materials and products. They want to avoid the redundancies and the conflicts between the specs and the drawings. I got burned many times on the construction site because issues came up, and even our internal documentation was not matching between multiple options. So you need to make sure that everything is streamlined and everything is clear, or else the contractor is going to have a change order. That change order could be thousands and thousands of dollars. So I was thinking like, okay, my users would definitely want to do something about this. And then lastly, I thought, they want to solve the lack of the resources to sort through several products to find their environmental impact. So those EPDs are hard to find. Some products don't have them available. They're hard to read. I thought, okay, maybe this is something that, especially with upcoming regulation, there's more and more cities and jurisdictions looking at embodied carbon guidelines. I thought, hey, this is something that probably architects and users would like to use. After that, I applied for the Schwartz Fellowship, which they send you to San Francisco. The Schwartz Center is an incredible place. You can go out there, ask any questions. They help you with the garage. They help you with the space in order to start your business. I also joined a group of MBA students called Climate Cap. Their fellowship group, they pay you to actually do research on an idea. I went back and said, I want to do the same prompt, and they give me money to keep going. And then I took a class here at CMU, in case you've never heard of it. It's called AI Ventures. And this is where students from around campus can apply. You get in, and you're able to pitch your ideas and recruit people. This is also it's not a Tepper course. I believe it's actually part of the School of Computer Science. So there's a lot of students that are masters of AI and have like programming experience. So through there, I met my co-founder, Sakit, and then we recruited additional people that could actually help me build a software. Still no idea what we were trying to do, but we just thought that, okay, we have a problem and we want to go ahead and tackle it, right? So started by talking to a lot of people through the summer. We took the class in the spring of last year, and by the end of the summer, we had talked to over 100 different architects and engineers, where we actually got a lot of information that we call it qualitative information. These are 30-minute discussions with the users, and asking them like, hey, what do you think about this? What are your biggest problems, and so forth. So that's what we call customer discovery. That included architects, engineers, interior designers, spec writers. And then we also did a survey. We sent out a survey to the professionals that we interviewed and other people in the industry, and we asked them specific questions in order to understand and gauge the importance of the issues, right? So I don't have any of the questions here, but I do have a lot of the results, which I thought actually were very important, and they really made us steer our business into a different direction. So some of the things that pop out to us was over 75% of the respondents were not satisfied with their current process to find products and research. So they think that there's a very fragmented workflow. They even share that they just save PDFs constantly, and they don't really read them again. And there's just a lot of wasted opportunity there. To find information, they typically rely on Google, Material Bank, and Forcepex, but mostly Google. So any architect engineer typically goes there, searches for something, finds it, copy-pastes a PDF, and saves it into a project folder. 70% of them desire more automation in the process. They think that it was just manual copy-paste and back and forth. And then 43 of the responders did not have any material database. The other 57% said, oh, we have a database, but it's just an Excel spreadsheet, or it's people just save Word files, which are not like information retrieval is very hard and it's extremely manual. So that's really what sparked our interest. We realized that there was no dedicated solution for this problem, which is how do I keep track of the materials and the products that go into my building? A lot of people just mention them into their BIM files like Revit, but they didn't really have anywhere where they can retrieve the information quickly. So that became kind of like our aha moment. There's also the customer discovery. And by the way, if you have any questions, let me know. I'm happy to pause and explain a little bit further. But one of the questions that we typically ask in all of these interviews was the magic one question, which is, if you could solve any issue at your work, what is it, right? And I read a book, I forgot the name of the book, but it's in the blog, where they said that this might be one of the most important questions. Like, first reaction, when you think about your job, what's the worst thing that you want to fix? And you want to attack the problems that they're mentioning. You don't want to come up with a confirmation bias of, hey, I had this idea and I'm going to shove it, rather than, no, we want to understand really what are the problems. So this came up multiple times. Communication, coordination issues, streamlining documentation, lack of centralized information systems, efficiency through quality control. People complain about time management and automation of repetitive tasks, right? These are very common, even outside of the world of architecture, but these are some of the things that we found out through our customer discovery. So some of our initial hypotheses and intuition were in the right place. Some of them did not seem to align with some of the things that they were saying. One of the things that was pretty heartbreaking, but at the same time, it made me realize that we needed to change direction is no one mentioned sustainability as their primary concern, right? They were always thinking about something that was affecting them at work. It wasn't really about like, hey, am I able to sort through all this sustainability data? It was more of like, no, I want to save time. I don't want to be working late hours. 36% of the respondents were concerned that they were not selecting sustainable products or materials. That means that the majority of them were thinking they were already doing their job. So it's hard to change behavior if they don't see it as a problem. And then lastly, the three biggest factors influencing their decision to specify materials were cost, durability, and aesthetics. Sustainability did come up, and I also thought it was pretty interesting. A lot of the sustainability factors came up for larger commercial firms. For smaller firms working on retail projects, hospitality, residential, it didn't even come up. So we understood that a lot of the users are having a lot of trouble keeping up with the cost, whether these products are some products that we trust, and really a lot of their big importance is how do they look. So with all of this in mind, we came up with a pitch, and we said we want to make an AI-enabled data management platform to help architects and engineers keep track of the products and the materials that go into their buildings. There's a software cloud product, and we went ahead and pitched outside of CMU. We have done a presentation. We had the slides ready. We had talked to some investors that said, hey, this sounds very interesting. This seems like a big problem. Why don't you go ahead and apply for accelerators? So we did that. In the summer of 2024, we pitched to several different accelerators. We got into Techstars, and then we got our first investor. We raised $120,000 just to get us going. And we asked and said, hey, we're still students. We're students at CMU. Do you mind if we do both? And they were totally OK with it. So I have yet to graduate CMU. I'll be graduating in May. But at least that gave us a head start to get going with $120,000 in our pocket. So I don't want to do the pitch as if you guys were investors. I want to just run through the information that I actually showed and tell you why I showed it. And I think that probably is a little more interesting for you guys. So obviously, go ahead and start with your introduction. You save over 8 hours a week. That was a big appeal, is how does this translate to economic value? And then we talked a lot about the testimonials and the people that we talked to. So having real quotes, hey, your specifications are so sucking. I feel like I'm wasting a lot of time. And the best way I can describe it is blood, sweat, and tears. I think trying to understand and portray that there's an actual problem comes best whenever you're taking quotes directly and testimonials from the users themselves. So we wanted to attack the problem. This is the problem slide. So the process currently to write specifications and save all this data is confusing, redundant, and prone to human error. Prone to human error because, like we mentioned, it's a very manual process. And I went ahead and I just mapped out typically what the different people in a firm, the different roles in a commercial firm typically looks like. So you have designers, sustainability leads, interior designers, project architects. You're gathering all this information and data. You're sending emails to a spec writer so they can review the material, put it into a folder. Then they have to go back, reread everything, and write them in their own technical language into Word files. The majority of architecture firms do this today. There's a few softwares that help you manage specifications like Deltek and Rib, and I'll talk about this in a second. But the reality is that the majority of them use templates from Word, and it has little red letters, and it says delete if you're not using this. Delete it, or add this if you want to add anything about lead. Extremely manual. So what we wanted to do is create a platform that's going to help you save time, reduce costs, and minimize the errors because you're taking the human factor out of it. So this is the video. I'm going to go ahead and show it so you get a little bit better idea what the software actually does. We offer the ability for any user to upload any product online. All you have to do is copy paste a URL or upload a PDF, and the LLM will go in and scrape all the relevant information. We have subdivided all of them by different CSI sections, so it'll identify whether you're looking at finishes, whether you're looking at lighting, or you're looking at any kind of product, and then from there it'll take the information, I'll prepare it. Once you're able to say, okay, I confirm that this is the final selection, your spec writer gets a notification, and he's able to see all the information about the product. He can go back, cross-reference it, immediately have the links, immediately have the PDFs all readily available. So that's really how the idea got started. And when it comes to competition, I think you want to find a way not to just do like an axis or a table. you really want to tell the investor or whoever you're talking to, of like, why is it that we're differentiated, right? So from my point of view, I looked at a lot of these softwares and I said, all right, these different solutions are either catering to a specific user type or a specific phase of the project. So for example, Programma is an interior designer solution. That one is typically more focused on schematic design and design development, but it has a lot of general project management tools. ACE Lab, which is the second one, is a marketplace. So they're limited by the selection that they have with specific manufacturers. Conspectus, RIB, and Deltec are mostly focused on just writing construction specifications, but don't have any additional features for sustainability, and their databases are not really good. And then lastly, there's another startup that we found that is called Part 3, which is mostly focused on taking the documentation that you already created and help you through construction administration. So we said, what happens if we change the offering? What happens if we say we are more of a horizontal for all of these interior designers, architects, engineers, but you can input any product and material, and we become that layer of we hold that data once it gets documented. This is only going to help us with the following differentiators. We give the abilities for the firms to personalize their databases. We take the human factor out and we automate a lot of this process. And lastly, you have unlimited products. And a lot of these other softwares are limited by the partnership that they've already created with manufacturers. In reality, we're not. We can let you use anything that you want. Why did we think that this was a good idea? Is because if we're able to actually own all the products and the materials that go into the building, you're going to influence construction specifications, but you're also going to influence the schedules, bid RFIs, submittals, substitution requests, and change orders. If you have one place where all your products are being labeled, categorized, it has all the additional PDF information, installation requests, warranty information, you can go back to our database, immediately find that information quickly, and even get a drafted response for all of these issues. These take a lot of time for architects and engineers to review the information and accurately give it back to a contractor. So why now? Like the big question that a lot of investors will ask is like, this is all good, but why is it that you think this is the right time for you to work on this problem? We talk about generally, AI advancements. There's a lot of, now it's more profitable for us to actually make a product like this. There's industry adoption. Around 5% of architecture firms currently use AI today. Nearly 70 of them are already exploring AI integrations into their projects and future business models. And then after reading the AIA tech survey, we realized that their number one priority is handling specification and project changes is their most primary pain point. So we think that our option helps with a lot of these things in different ways. Then, and there's a lot of discussion about this one, the market size. Whenever you talk to investors, is like, how big is this opportunity? For us, we look at the TAM, the total addressable market, around being 10 billion. That is all the design and construction software market. SAM being the amount of architects and engineers in the whole country. If we were to multiply it by an annual subscription of $1,600, that gives you an idea of the serviceable, addressable market. And then lastly, SUM is what we think we can attract within the next 5 years. That being said, that would be around 5% of the current SAM. That gives you 58.6 million. If you have questions about this, I'm always happy to go back and explain it a little more further. But there's a very standard slide just to get an idea for your investors of how potentially big could this opportunity be. And then when it comes to go-to-market strategy, we always talk about, we start with the small firms, easy to attract, easy for me to talk to the decision makers. But the ultimate goal is going to be the large firms, because they make 60% of the billings when it comes to architectural engineering fees. Pricing structure right now, we use it as a tier system depending on the amount of people that you have in the firm. This is because we think that we can have standard size or standard pricing for up to 4 seats, up to 9 seats, and then any firm that has over 10 architects or engineers will go ahead and create a more custom plan for them. Really, the enterprise, the way I see it, is you make more money on the enterprise side, but you streamline the pro and premium versions because they're easily able to sign up for your service. This is the team. Alex is somewhere in there in the crowd. What's up, Alex? Hey. We have Alex, Saket, and myself. We're all students here at Carnegie Mellon. Here's a little overview of what we've done so far on the bottom, but that's our team that's been building the software. And then I finish off always my presentations with a little QR code, so you can always find our software, or always find our website. And then I always recommend people, don't limit yourself to just the slides that are the initial slides that people want. Always add an appendix just to get ahead of the frequent, like the FAQs, right? So a lot of the questions that I've gotten from investors is who made the decision and why should I worry about the construction specifications and why should I worry about databases? Everybody touches the specs. So even though there are specific spec writers in each firm, architects, engineers, project managers, consultants, everybody within that dotted line really have an influence over the products and the materials that are being selected into a building. After that, I also talk a little bit more about the firm. You want to understand who makes the decision for buying the software. If you talk to like a junior architect, they may not be able to make a decision, right? Like they don't have the authority to do that. So understand who are your champions, who are the people that are going to advocate for your firm ownership or firm leadership to adopt the software. And then also keep an eye out for the potential blockers. In this case, it could be the BIM department, the IT department. They might have some questions about security, especially when it comes to software in the cloud. So it's a good idea to always do some kind of diagram just to understand what the typical structure is within your clients or your customers. Here's a good example of a journey map or journey mapping. I took one of my old coworkers, I asked her a few questions, and then we went step by step. Like, what are some of the motivations? How do you feel when you start a project? Oh, like, I'm pretty excited, but I'm also having to do with some pain points, which I leave on the bottom. And then what are the places that you're feeling burnout? Where are the places that you have a lot of these challenges that we mentioned before? And that's a good graphical way to describe to somebody like, hey, I think we're tackling a big problem because this is what your users, your end users are going to worry about. And then a little bit further onto the structure or side of a firm is the persona profiles. So I took some examples from my old firm, but what are the motivations behind the people that we interviewed? So Tim, being my old boss, he's worried about profitability and efficiency. He wants their teams to be efficient. He wants to minimize the amount of change orders. He wants them to be working on more projects, right? So understanding that that's his motivations. What are the frustrations? Well, they don't want to go through a lot of rework. They don't want to make a lot of mistakes because it's going to cost them in the long run. That translates to billable time for the team. And then the buying power is extremely important. Like we talked about, who's the decision maker? Somebody like Tim who owns the firm, he is a decision maker. Valerie, who's a project architect, she doesn't have the power, but she can be a champion. Same thing with people in other leads, like Vikram being a sustainability lead, Steven being a spec writer. They have different attributes, and that's why you really need to define those personas early in the process. So with that being said, we use this very similar pitch to this whenever we pitch to Techstars and other accelerators. And I'll just tell you a little bit more what we're doing right now. So right now I'm either here at CMU, at Tepper, working in the Schwartz Center, or I'm traveling. We're starting to do more road shows. We're trying to do more pitch competitions. We're developing our software at the same time, or at least the second version. Once we create an MVP, which is called the minimum viable product, we were able to show that to users and then start to sign on our first few customers. I also, as part of Climate Cap, I wrote a blog. I never thought I would write a blog in my life, but here we are. You're welcome to read it, especially if you're interested in entrepreneurship. I think it was fresh in my mind, and Climate Cap really wanted me to write my experience. So you can go in there, and I think the first few entries that I have is how to identify the problem and validate it with customers. How is it that you need to get out of the building and talk to people and find a specialist and cross-reference the information? How do you form a team and what the team dynamics should be like? And then one of the lessons that I had to learn the hard way is when you start building, start small and iterate fast. I think one of the biggest lessons learned, in my opinion, was I think initially when we pitched the idea, we had this grand vision, and it was going to take months and months of developing all of these different things. how can you synthesize it to a minimum viable product that you can just turn out and send it to customers and be like, what do you think about this? Once you start getting more and more feedback quickly, then you're able to move faster and you realize what are the features that they care about, what are the things that they care about, because that's really what you should be building. So thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to answer any questions. But yeah, thank you.
So we really encourage the asking of questions. We want this to be a dialogue, and we really want this to be valuable to all of you. Several of you, many of you raised your hand saying you're interested in being an entrepreneur and starting a company. And so we wanted to provide this kind of space for you to ask questions and learn, I'll ask the first question to kind of break the ice. So I'm sure you talked about a lot of this in your blog, but it sounds to me like you started at an architectural firm and you had an idea and you kind of went to business school to pursue that idea. But what is your advice to some of the students who might be in the audience who they're here to study mechanical engineering or material science, and they may have an idea now as a student, but they're kind of not in that track? Who should they talk to first, and what's your advice to them?
Yeah, I definitely don't think you need an MBA to do any of this. The only reason I did it is because I was working a very demanding job and I needed time to step away and actually focus on something that I wanted to build, right? But as a student, I think you have so many resources here to get you going. I think my biggest piece of advice is start small. Start with Project Olympus on campus. Meredith Gurley, who's in charge of the program, is amazing. She was one of my professors. Really, before you build anything, before you even write any line of code or you start making any mock-ups or anything, you need to understand who you're selling to and what their actual problems are. If you go too far and then realize that that was something they're not willing to pay for, you kind of like shoot yourself in the foot. So first word of advice is really start with the customer discovery part. If you want to work on something, let's say you're a mechanical engineer, but you haven't graduated college and you don't know many people in the industry, use the CMU network to get a hold of them. My biggest piece of advice is if you do Project Olympus, they'll find a way to start introducing you to other people and, network, and a lot of like mutual connections are eventually going to get you to the place you want to go. Yeah.
Questions from the audience?
I wanted to know, how did you select your team and build your team around this? And did everyone agree on the idea, or you were the person who actually pushed for the idea and you built the team around it?
Yeah, so I met my team initially through AI Ventures, and then students that had a different experience than I had, right? I think it really depends on what nature of startup you want to be building. I don't think that 2 MBAs are really going to make that much difference as if you have somebody that is picking up on your blind spots. So I knew I was looking for people that were technical. I don't code. So I ended up becoming more of like the business person, the investor, talking to users. I understood the problem well because I went through it. And then I found people that were passionate about the idea. I met them through AIV. I met them through the Entrepreneurship Center. We have competitions. There's happy hours. You just got to network. And then that way you meet people. And I think once you start building something cool, like honestly, people will come and ask you about it. People are going to get interested and say like, hey, like, what is they working on? Can I like work with you for a few months and see how it goes? So that's really how we started meeting each other. For me, it wasn't that I had an idea and I just wanted people to build it. For me, it's I have a problem. How do I tackle it? And when I started talking to people about, hey, there's a real problem, Sakid and I met at the beginning of last year, and he had his own ideas. He had his own solutions that I'd never even considered. So I think you want to be looking for people that have diverse kind of experience and that are passionate about building something great. Even if they're not from the architecture industry or not from your industry, they might have something that they can bring to the table that can make it more special. Yeah. Don't start with hard questions here.
I do have a question, not about the process, but more about the company itself. One of the issues with the construction industry is that a lot of these specifications, inventory is still like handwritten, and asking them to move from a handwritten phase to something that's on a software where they can go through? Is that change can sometimes be difficult? Is that something you guys have thought about? What is the feedback?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the current processes are manual, right? And there were some crazy things that I read. Like, I think the average age of a spec writer today is like over 60-something years old, right? So a lot of these users don't actually know much about cloud, or they don't really know about like AI, and are a little bit shy from using it. So my big picture answer to that is, how do you remove friction, right? Like, how do you make it extremely easy and intuitive for them to do it? So what we offer is, you're already saving this information about products and materials, but you're saving them in a folder as a PDF, and you never look at them again. Can you just copy paste the URL? It's so simple, right? So if you remove the friction and then they can see the benefit down the road, we think that that could help. Now, I don't have the final answer. We are in the process of onboarding our first few customers, so I think that's going to be very telling. We haven't, we're pre-revenue. We haven't really worked or given this solution for firms long term, so we need to see if their behavior changes with the solution that we have. We could be right, or we could be wrong, right? But as a startup, like, what you're doing is putting something forward, see how they react, then come back and then keep fixing. So I doubt that our final solution is going to look exactly what we build. But yeah, it's just time will tell. Thank you.
Hi, great talk. So I was interested to know what's your long-term vision for the company. How do you intend to scale this up, and who are your biggest customers, or competitors, not customers, probably competitors right now?
Yeah, so we have, I would say there's several competitors. One that like my entrepreneurship professors always like to talk about is, like, if you think that you don't have competition, the process itself is the competition, right? So how are you gonna get them into using your software, like we talked about? In this case, I see different solutions. I see softwares trying to attack the same problem in a different way, right? So Ace Lab, which is the one that has, that is on top of DD, they're a marketplace, right? They have some advantages because they already have a lot of the materials and products preloaded, right? So they're saving money that way. Our biggest cost is the variable cost, which is every time they use our API, that basically we lose money, right? So there's some different advantages and disadvantages. But long term, what I think is the big vision is, can we be the go-to place where you document every single product and material that you put into your building? So marketplaces are limited because they're never going to have all the products. It's impossible. And so specification softwares, what happens if instead of us challenging the specification softwares, we actually integrate it into their process? Because we could be feeding them all the materials and products already as we document them. Long-term vision, I do see it as an integration play. Maybe we find different ways of helping you answer RFIs and submittals through a different software, but we're influencing a lot of that information, or where the information comes from, and it's already streamlined. I also think that there's so many different ideas that we floated around. We want to start engaging with manufacturers and suppliers to also understand what are their issues, because we plan to gather a lot of information, right? And if architecture engineering firms are leaving comments or lessons learned about specific manufacturers or products, we would be able to get some of that information and say, hey, manufacturers, do you want to know what architects and engineers think about your product? Do you want to know when they get compared against your biggest competitor, and why is it that they're getting selected? And that's valuable information for a manufacturer or supplier that I believe they're willing to pay for. So ultimately, the goal is to be that product and material layer for building products, so we can get a lot of insights through that process.
Hi, great talk. I really enjoyed the presentation. My question is kind of a follow-up from the previous one. So you mentioned different life cycles of the building, which you cover in your app. So I was wondering if you're also considering the afterlife, or the after use of the materials for the specifications.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. As of right now, we're really focused on the design part of the process. We have talked to some building owners where they thought, hey, I looked at your website and we could use that information. So for example, post-occupancy, if maybe a CMU, like building facilities, group, right? Do they want to have access to the database? Know exactly what were the products and the materials, the models, the different SKUs, and all this kind of stuff that are associated with their products and hand them to them. I think we will have to learn a little bit more about that because some architects and engineers may not want that or may not want the liability that information could be incorrect when we truly trust the construction documents, right? So as an architect, you probably already know this, but we're giving them the construction documents and the specifications, and those are contractual documents. Having an owner have access to its platform does not make it contractual, right? So those are things that, different nuances that we'd have to consider. But yeah, post-occupancy, that's something that I think like a register or like archive of all this information could be pretty handy.
I have a question about motivation. So when you started, you were very focused on sustainability and helping architects design more sustainably and make sure they had the right information. But then it sounds like things shifted over time. So maybe your original passion for the work maybe changed. So how did you keep yourself motivated with that taking maybe a backseat to what your original thought was on what the market wanted?
Yeah, I mean, I was a little conflicted, not gonna lie, right? You're getting all this feedback and you're asking a lot of good questions and you're talking to all these people and you think like, hey, like I really want this to happen. And then some people don't even consider it, right? And I think those are part of the realities of the world that we live in. How can I, and this is gonna sound weird, but how can I smuggle carbon emission savings into my software? So I think in one of the mock-ups here, is the EPD included? What is the global warming potential associated with this product if we were able to scrape it directly from the manufacturer's website? That could be even as a simple UI change of there's sustainability data being portrayed for this interface product but not for Shaw. Is that gonna sway your decision for which product are you using, right? And it's similar to like Google Flights. Like if you go to Google Flights now, there's a little leaf and it says how many emissions are associated with the flight. Do you want to go on a direct flight with American, or do you want to pay a little bit less, go with Delta, but it's going down south, and then you see that one option is actually better for the environment. If we're able to include that into the UI whenever they're selecting materials, we may be able to sway their decision making. And on top of that, we could potentially, if we start building manufacturing and supplier like relationships, we can tell them, it's like, hey, your product is not being selected for this kinds of projects because you don't have information disclosed in your website. So I think that we can apply pressure without having to hinder on the concept here, which is, at the end of the day, what architects care about is how am I saving money?
So a number of people at the beginning of this raised their hand saying they were interested in starting a company, but I have a question for people who may not be interested in starting a company themselves, but maybe joining a company. So what would your advice to students or faculty or staff in the room who are interested in joining a company, but may not necessarily be ready to, take on the full-on lead?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's amazing talent at the CMU. I think there's people out there that are working on like really, really cool ideas. Go out there and find them. I mean, even if you're just helping without getting paid, even if you're just, doing like a class together and you say like, hey, like I think I have some ideas. Maybe there's a way that I can help or donate a little bit of time. And I stand by this. I think your best network is doing great work. It's not just going to a happy hour and shaking hands. I think if you devote your time to like building something interesting and great or something that you think can make a difference in the world will actually help you network more. In my case, obviously, I am starting a company, but I realized after a few months that the people that I meet all the time are CEOs, other startups. Hopefully one of them will make it big, right? So you're getting a lot of great exposure by being in the startup world, and you're owning a lot of these decisions. So if you can join a small startup, even a group here at the university, or start looking at startups that are hiring post Series A, I think there's a lot more growth that you can do than working at this giant company and then being in charge of one little feature. That's my point of view. I'm not saying don't take the job. I'm just saying, find those opportunities to collaborate with great students around campus. Awesome.
I wanted to ask, how much did SWAT's fellowship and Project Olympus help you in building all of this? Like how to start your own, maybe domain name, everything, and the funding if you're searching for that, anything like that. Yeah. And how was the process for all of it?
Yeah, I would say, we have a lot of support in campus, right? So like we mentioned Project Olympus being able to give you structure for customer discovery. Schwartz Entrepreneurship, they do give some funding after you graduate. You can apply for VentureBridge as an alum, and then that's an accelerator. They give you $25,000. There's also the McGinnis competition. Not sure if anybody has heard of it, but that's a startup competition with additional funding. I think a lot of this stuff is also self-guided, right? Like you want to buy a domain, you go buy a domain, go GoDaddy.com by yourself and then figure it out. But the real lessons that you get from Entrepreneurship Center and from Project Olympus is like the big picture things that you should learn, right? But the nuances of how to deal with a lawyer, that might be like a Connect series or some like 30-minute presentation, and that's it. I think I learned a lot just by doing, and even if I'm doing an MBA and you think you're going to learn all this stuff about business, I learn more by doing the startup than I do in the classroom, and maybe that's because I'm more of a practical person.
Any other questions from the audience? Well, Ruben, this has been a super inspiring, super informative talk. Thank you for sharing your entrepreneurial journey with us, and please join me in giving a round of applause to Ruben.
Thank you.